Hey, what's going on, everybody? On today's show, AI literacy is becoming a major focus for large technology companies who are investing heavily to embed their tools and influence within the education system as a strategic way to gain early adoption and market presence. Their push positions AI literacy as both a necessary skill for the future workforce and as a new channel for tech giants to build loyalty and dependence among teachers and students. And so that's sort of the blurb to get us going today. This is the Daily AI Show. Brian, I'm joined by Jyunmi and Andy. Welcome, guys. And like I said, that's sort of like light intro there, but really what we're talking about today is about AI literacy. And we're going to talk about, when we talk about the major players, who are we talking about? Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, Apple, IBM, Facebook or Meta, and Anthropic and Amazon. Those are going to be the big ones we'll kind of talk about. They all are spending money here, not hundreds of thousands, millions, sometimes billions, depending on what they're trying to do. So we'll dive into all of that today. Before we get going, I want to tell you guys about something that our lovely friend Anne has going on with She Leads AI, and we told her we would help spread the word all this week. So let me tell you a little bit about it really quick, and then we'll get into the show. So She Leads AI unites accomplished women to advance AI for global prosperity. As this October 11th through 14th in Salt Lake City, they're hosting their first ever personal in-person event, the Create Conference. I went too far there. Sorry. If you care about AI in the future and are a woman, it's worth the effort to show up in person. If you care about diversity in AI decision making, it's worth supporting Create with your sponsorship or marketing dollars. At Create, women leaders will share what's actually happening with AI adoption on a personal level across organizations and across industries, not the stuff you see on LinkedIn, what's really going on. Experts in AI and law will show you how to protect your intellectual property, even inside your prompts. They'll also walk you through how to set up AI projects with intention of saving the world, because you just might. You'll learn how to monetize your AI expertise and how to pivot your personal brand into credible AI leadership. And there's even a sound bath to calm the tech fried brain. I love that. So if you're building anything with AI, tools, teams, or reputation, you want to be at Create. And if you use code DAIS 100, which is DAIS 100, Daily AI Show. That's where the DAIS, right? 100 to get 100 off your ticket. And you would do that by going to createconference2025.com. And just last part on there, that is again October 11th through 14th in Salt Lake City. So it's coming up very soon. That's the Create Conference. So yes, wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of that. We love what Anne is doing, as well as everybody involved in it. And we would love to get the word out for it. So that's that. All right, let's get into the show, guys, today. Like I said at the top, there's a lot of different companies that are diving into this, but I'll talk about the one that actually got me excited about doing this show, and that's Anthropic. Anthropic has put out like code for students. We're already familiar with what they're doing in terms of what they can do with Claude Code. But they're also, just like last week, they put out a whole new blog talking about how they had these free AI literacy courses. So this is their lead magnet, right? Their tools, what they're building, are their lead magnets, these Claude Code or just Claude in general, or any other tools. They're building these lead magnets and saying, hey, we will provide this free training to you, teachers, educators, school leaders, so that you can better understand how to bring AI literacy into your school, which is great. I'm all for the free education and the free training. I mean, all of them, Microsoft, they all have some version of this, but they're the ones that kind of got me excited about this conversation, because what it really makes me think, and I don't necessarily say this in a bad way, but much like when I was, a younger kid, one year I came back to school. I'm imagining it would have had to have been elementary or maybe middle school. I'm not quite sure, when the Macintoshes and the Apple IIe's and stuff. It could have been earlier. All of a sudden, we had a classroom that had Apple IIe's in it. Well, how did they get there? Well, through a fund or endowment or something, or Apple deeply cutting the cost of that so that they could show up in the classrooms. And we would do things like play, Oregon Trail, which anybody my age would remember doing back in the day on there, and learning little things on how to like draw a picture on the screen, simple stuff. But it was my first introduction not only to computers, but it was on a Macintosh. It was on an Apple. And so obviously those commands are a little bit different. And so obviously not only is that great for the students, we're all getting access to computers where we didn't previously have that, also great for the company. And so we've seen this over and over and over again. And AI literacy to me is like that next battleground. It's that next area where all the major players want to be the solution for education so that they can then have a way to bring in all their other products. And if that means for Google, either deeply discounting or giving away their best model, Gemini 2.5 Pro, as well as their best video model, VO3, as well as Notebook LM, which is free for everybody, but the students get additional access to it, and they can get that into all the classrooms. That's a win for Google, obviously, for a lot of good reasons. So I'll stop there. I want to bring it out to you guys. What are your guys' thoughts on this as we sort of get into this conversation, and we'll take it from there.
So there's this enormous tension between the need to expose students, even in primary school, to AI literacy, which has to include, critical thinking about what AI can and cannot do. We want that to happen. It's an essential initiative globally for everyone to get up to speed with AI, because it's so profoundly influential in everything that we do. It has so many possible negative outcomes as well. So understanding all of that's really important. At the same time, education is also possessed of this knee-jerk response, which is you cannot use AI. This is not to be used in the school. If you do, you will be booted from this class. That, there's really a problem with the sort of messaging that's happening right now in the educational sector. And how do we overcome that prohibition on the use of AI out of a concern about plagiarism and, lack of sort of provenance identification, like meaning, did you write this or did AI write this for you? And we know that there are negative outcomes as a result of overly reliant use of AI. But that's part of AI literacy. You need to understand what it is that's happening to you when you're using AI. So I wanted to just point out that the World Economic Forum has an entire initiative around AI literacy. They call it AI Lit. And we can talk about that in more detail. But I just wanted to start out by pointing out this problem that's happening in the early phases of the introduction of AI into the educational system.
Well, let's get to your thoughts too, Jyunmi, but let's definitely talk about AI Lit from the World Economic Forum, because there's a lot of good programs out there. That one's one we should definitely pull up on screen and talk about more, though, Andy, because I think it's a great initiative, and it'll be interesting to see where that lies. But Jyunmi, what are your thoughts on where we are? Obviously, as Andy's pointing out, there's a chasm here, right? We have a bunch of schools or a bunch of big companies, major players here in AI, who want AI to be part of the learning in schools, but we do have a lot of pushback from schools saying, not in my house, not here. We're preserving the real way of learning. And it seems to be becoming this divisive thing where somehow AI is being labeled in education as fake or cheating or the easy way or whatever. And then the only alternative to that is the standard traditional way, instead of what we would say, and I don't put words in your mouth, but what we would all agree is no, AI needs to be used as part of the new way to make things more efficient, to make it easier for students to learn, to make it more personalized. Perhaps the biggest issue for me would be that AI will one day achieve true personalization at scale in all of education, and equity will no longer be something we're talking about. But what are your thoughts on it?
I think you're both on track in identifying what the current issues are and potential paths that we can take. I think the bottom line is the education system as it is and the methodologies that exist work for a pre-AI world, and even that can be argued because of the source of why this school system, like the K-12 system, was created the foundations of that in the United States, anyways, and what its purpose is. So we'll ignore those root causes in the beginning, but what we're at here is a huge technological shift and a huge change to access of information and the methodology of execution, right? So you've mentioned things like critical thinking skills, analysis, ways to expand your knowledge and expand your experience with having easy to access information. Right, that's what it really is. And all of the things that we used to burden or used to be as a guidance on how to learn things such as homework, right? And how outdated that concept is. The concept of um, going off, writing something and bringing it back, right? That was all methodologies to either teach you how to write, teach you the muscle memory of writing back in before there was computers. I remember getting a lot of flack for, and I think I've said this before, is I got a computer early. And so, and a printer early. So I was able to print up everything. So my handwriting might be atrocious because I no longer am writing cursive, right, 1,000 times on a piece of paper or on a tablet or anything like that, right? So, but that was a huge technological shift. Now computers are everywhere in the education system, right? They found that the benefits of the technology and what it could improve as part of learning, as being another tool, superseded having the really nice cursive handwriting, right? In terms of priority, what we want for education. AI will be the same kind of thing, right? What we have to look at is recreating or heavily modifying the system as it is. And there's always going to be pushback when you say, oh, you got to change everything that you thought before. Oh, why is that? Well, because sending a kid home to write an essay and come back, right, when the kid doesn't have the experience of the reason why I'm sending you home to write the essay is we don't have the class time or the space for you to sit here and do the lesson in front of me where I can help you, right? But with AI, that's been replaced. You can do that in the class. You can work with them. You can answer the questions. You can have that tutor. It's just the way you want to apply it. Your current systems, your current methodologies do not align with how AI works or AI technology works. So adapt the lesson. Brian, you've talked about in the past how some of your local teachers have adapted their lesson plan to include AI and for lack of a better term, a healthy way, an educator's way of including AI into that process. Right. Andy, you've talked about some schools going back to the blue books where you write your essays in class in front of the professor and things like that. All this really is you need to look at it holistically and say, hey, education and the system that runs it just needs to be changed. There are lots of things that should have been changed from before, but here's an opportunity and an impetus to make all of those changes now. Go ahead and make those large changes. If you need to say some of those changes need to be because of the wave of AI, so be it. You don't have any excuses anymore. Go forward and make all of those sweeping changes that you want. Now, there is divergent ideas of how much change and in which direction and things like that. Some are even advocating for the complete dismantlement of the current system, and everyone will just have their own personal AI tutor, and maybe it'll just be assessments run by a board, those kinds of things. I'm not advocating one way or another, but what we need to recognize and accept is the wave of change is here and you need to adapt.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one of the things we can get into are, some of the roadblocks, and it's at all levels, right? specifically in some states, one of those major, either it'll be the road in or not, will be unions, teacher unions, who are not necessarily going to be proactive about bringing in AI if there's even a whiff that it could reduce teacher roles or positions, right? That they're there to protect the teachers. That's what the unions are there to do. And there's some issues. However, some of the major players, in fact, I'd have to go back through and look at which one is working directly with the unions, but I know it came up in one of the companies. It wasn't OpenAI. I will find it. One of the major companies, when I was doing the research, specifically pointed out how they're working with through teacher unions, because they see that probably as a less, obtrusive path to getting into schools. If you went over the union passes on to the teachers, says this is a good thing. There's a lot of pull there, a lot of politics involved with it, obviously. And obviously these major companies want to play ball with them. So there's not only that, then you have your legislative, you could have a superintendent that could be a massive roadblock to AI if that superintendent is just sort of like old school thinking and doesn't believe anything should change in that particular school district, and cause all sorts of blocks to really good, new, innovative ideas. But, I think about my daughter's school and other schools, we're so far away from what the potential is here. You could literally, with AI, if you had it, if like my daughter has a Chromebook as part of her school, they assigned her one as part of the school. And I realize not every school is like that. That's just what they're doing at my daughter's high school. But you can imagine how, just because across the hall is history and then she's in biology, doesn't mean you couldn't use AI and actually work virtually across the hall using AI to go and gather as many quality resources, just like they used to do back in the day. Get your citations, but then teaching them how to use the skills and the tools like AI to get there faster. How to route around something like a Wikipedia or a poor citation, which happens all the time. Well, where did that one come from? Well, it's cited. Wait, hold on. Where was that cited for? And following the lead. You could make entire, for lack of a better term, projects or games around this across two totally different topics, two different, like history and biology, that are just happening in the same school. But you could still do it in a way that makes it fun for the students to learn how to use AI tools to get to problem solving, critical thinking skills faster. So, bringing up like the World Economic Forum, if we scroll down, I'll bring it up on my screen here because this is maybe a nice little pivot. Because they kind of break down some of the core areas. First and foremost, I'll start it at the top of the screen here. The headline alone should be attention grabbing. Why AI literacy is now a core competency in education. Well, I hope it is. I hope it's going to be a core competency. I don't know that I would say it's now, but I agree with their intent to do that.
Well, I want to add something. Just
Sure.
Notice that they show a mobile phone with the apps on it.
Yep.
And that's the way that the next generations who are in school now, primary and secondary, this is their interface. They don't spend a lot of time at a laptop or a desktop. They're doing it through the phone, and it's in their classrooms often. Although there are sort of Luddite schools that are saying, no, you have to put your phone in the basket or in the cubby hole.
I mean,
if you have one, when you come into the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter has that. They have the cubbies. They're not as cool as I was envisioning in my mind. They're really just big baskets. I'm like, it's annoying. Like I thought they would be a little bit more organized or whatever. But every teacher seemed to have their own process, which was a little weird a couple of weeks ago when I met the teachers. But regardless, that's what they do. But they do have. But in my daughter's case, they do have the Chromebook. So like sort of a workaround to that, Andy. But I know what you're talking about. And also, look, we know this is only going more multimodal. The idea that everybody is texting everything out, forget it. You're going to have entire classrooms having entire conversations vocally with one of the AI, abilities. And that AI, the teacher might set it up in a way that the AI pushes back against them and challenges their critical thinking. And one student will have to be, she'll be like, or the teacher will be like, throw anything out. There's no bad ideas. There's no bad ideas here. Just think critically. Just think open-ended. Don't block yourself. And then you could imagine students throwing out ideas, and this AI assistant, this vocal assistant in the room saying, good idea, but what about this? What do you guys think about this? And a teacher setting up that for success, knowing what the full sort of like program, for lack of a better term, but just a really good prompt could do. It's truly limitless what you can teach and convey with some of these new AI technologies. I wanted to just scroll down really quick because what the this AI Lit from the World Economic Forum, what they talk about with the framework is they break it down into 23 competencies. And while we probably don't have time to get into all the different competencies, if you go down here to core skills in 2025, they have 10 core skills. And I think this comes from, it says it comes from the Future Jobs Report 2025. And this is what it says the 10 skills are. We can, bring this into the conversation. 1, analytical thinking. 2, resilience, flexibility, and agility. 3, leadership and social influence. 4, creative thinking. 5, motivation and self-awareness. 6, technological literacy. 7, empathy and active listening. 8, curiosity and lifelong learning. 9, talent management. 10, service orientation and customer service. And when I look at that list and I think about my daughter and I think, ooh, she's got like a freshman orientation course right now, which by the way, good for them for doing that. That's the first time I've seen that. But if she was in part of her education was using AI to hit these core skills, and she walked away in 4 years with a better understanding in all of these 10 core areas, I would consider that a massive win. Now, I know as a parent, I can't rely on the school to do that. So it's going to be upon me and my community of people to do this for my daughter and make sure she has these skills as a, responsible parent. But I think this is a good way of sort of breaking down the idea. So I love that they kind of put that into their overall project here. And I do want to just bring up before I throw it back to you guys that the draft AI Lit framework is open for public consultation until late 2025, and the final version will be released in 2026. Educators, policymakers, curriculum designers, and education leaders are encouraged to explore the framework and share their feedback. So if that's you, if you feel like you have something to add to this conversation, well, then you should go to the World Economic Forum, and there's a link here, but also you can find out how you can provide your feedback on what they're ultimately trying to do with this AI Lit program. But again, they're just one of many that are doing this because, like I said, when we looked at when I looked at Perplexity and did the research earlier today, all major companies are doing something. Microsoft being the biggest, and Microsoft has a $4 billion commitment currently, $4 billion. Through their Elevate program, their National Academy for AI and Structured Partnerships. That's $23 million by itself. And that's a joint initiative with OpenAI and Anthropic to train 400,000 K through 12 educators through the American Federation of Teachers. Then you have Hour of AI with code.org. You have a partnership with North Rhine-Westphalia, which is in Germany. So outside, obviously, the borders of the United States, as you would imagine, and on and on. $4 billion. I mean, it's, that alone tells you the seriousness for a company like Microsoft and being part of this. This is their new Microsoft 365. This is their new suite of Excel, Word, PowerPoint, whatever.
Yeah. So I let me just add back on the subject of the World Economic Forum's AI Lit program. It's a part of a division of the World Economic Forum's sort of research and development arm called the Center for the New Economy and Society. It's the platform for leaders to shape inclusive, equitable economies and societies for all. So they're providing this, it's open source in effect. They're providing this to every country as the framework that you can use to try to guide AI literacy in your population. And this initiative that will wrap up in 2025 and be delivered and published in early 2026 is going to provide this framework, and it includes those 10 skills that you talked about, and basically the imperative that you need to expose everyone in your primary and secondary educational sequence. You need to expose them to critical thinking skills about AI to understand what it can and cannot do. Now, I want to respond quickly to Gwyn's very astute question is, what is China doing about this AI literacy in their schools? And so thank you to Gemini. China is advancing AI literacy beginning in September 2025 for the school year. Students receive at least 8 hours of AI instruction annually. The national curriculum is structured in tiers. You get basic concepts in the early grades, practical AI applications in middle school, and advanced innovation projects in high school. This initiative includes developing systematic AI courses, expanding digital teaching resources, providing teacher training, and fostering critical thinking about AI outputs, aiming to cultivate a generation adept in AI for a future smart society. That's the Chinese take on it. And I don't know that our education department, I'm sorry, I forgot. We closed it.
Yeah, it's going to be, I'm trying to think how to say this. Like a lot of things.
Imagine how hard it will be for every state to try to coordinate and
Right.
align in a way that makes for the fluid dynamics of an open and remote workforce that's empowered by electronics. If I go to school in Alabama, do I know the same things about AI as if I went to school in California? I don't know.
No,
It's
because
not going to happen.
we know that for the rest of the subjects, that's not the case.
So, but that does put a little greater burden on the major AI companies to provide these things in the absence of an education department that's as centralized as the Chinese, or even as centralized as having a federal education department that can support education initiatives as critical as developing AI literacy in our next generations.
So is that vacuum going to be filled by one of these major companies? Are they going to end up being the centralized? They'll pump the money into it. They'll provide the free resources to it. It solves for equity, or inequality, right? Like as far as students being able to have access, because look, a lot of students in the United States, and I'm sure around the world, the only way they have access to reliable Wi-Fi would be at their school. We know this. There is whatever you have at your house, whether the people listening to that have, fiber optic or you have cable, whatever, just know that you probably have an internet speed, a reliable internet speed that you could watch a Netflix or YouTube on. But that is not the case for many, many students around just this country, never mind other countries around the world. And so on top of needing to be able to provide this AI literacy in the school, we also have to come up with ways to have kids at the school, perhaps for longer periods of time, where they're able to get access to this. Because assuming that they will be able to go do this AI thing at home is unreliable. I know from working with Proximity Learning and Evan Erberg, who's a wonderful CEO of that company. Definitely go check them out. Proximity Learning, they help. Basically what they do is they put live virtual teachers in classrooms. Now, that's not to, I don't want anybody thinking this is like to cut out teachers. No, it's in places around the country where teachers have not been able to be hired for a subject for a very long time. Think like somewhere in Mississippi where they just couldn't get a Spanish teacher in. So bad in some cases that they stopped building like science labs because they'd have been so long since they've been able to get a teacher for science that the school board could now no longer justify building labs. If you don't have the teachers, why would you build the labs? What Proximity Learning does, not to give this sort of promo, but it is a cool company, is they do live virtual teaching, not asynchronous, not off, not teach on your own. That teacher is in the classroom. And then there's also a live person that's more like a teacher's assistant, but they don't have to be a certified teacher in the classroom, walking around the desks, answering questions, making sure kids have what they need. But that's what they do. And if they didn't do that, these students would literally not have that grade available to them at their school. And so when I've heard all these stories over the years and talking to Evan over countless hours of talking to him and working with him, what I really found is that, there's deep inequality as far as what students have or don't have. And it's not that uncommon for students to get this homework that requires internet and they have to go sit outside of this is like a real story where the parent in the minivan would sit outside the Starbucks, because if you were in the Starbucks parking lot, they could get a good enough Wi-Fi signal, and the child would do their homework in the back of the minivan so that they can have good enough Wi-Fi to complete the assignment. So that's just where we are today. Now you layer on everything with AI and literacy. We absolutely cannot rely on our students being able to do this on their own at home. You said it before, Jimmy, with homework. That needs to go away. And what if it really means is that we need to fund, this is my opinion, obviously not everybody's, but if that means we need to find new funding so that students can come in an hour earlier or stay an hour later in class in a school system where they're protected, and they can get this training for AI literacy to set them up for the future, well, then that's what I think should happen. Because the minute they go home, you're completely out of control, and it's completely unfair. The only way it's fair is if we teach AI literacy at the school, where everybody, at least at that school, of course, we're not talking about rich districts versus poor districts, but at least at that school has the same ability to thrive. Because we can't just send this home and say, deal with this on the home. A lot of students just simply do not have the infrastructure to be able to run a simple prompt on ChatGPT. It would time out. It simply just wouldn't work. So that's something we have to consider as well, is where are our students today, and making sure that we're coming up with, literacy solutions that work for all students, not just the rich students or the students that happen to live in, ritzier areas that get endowments and personal, investments into the school system so they can have the latest and greatest computers,
I agree. I think you're speaking towards some of the core issues that we were trying to identify, or that we were identifying earlier. There is plenty of issues that exist within the education system now. You totally identified a good chunk of them with infrastructure, access, how we distribute or disseminate information and funds and resources. And so it really comes down to, well, how do we empower students, educators, and parents, families to give the best level of education to all students within the country, within the world, and so that we can raise that bar or that level of education, giving them all of the skills that they need to not only survive but thrive in the world and make it ostensibly ideal. The ideal is make it a better place, and so I think a lot of the discourse seems to be about these immediate, in front of your face issues. It's like, oh, there's AI, it's causing a change, so we want to push back against that. For me, it all comes back down to, hey, you now have the ability to make the changes that you've been talking about for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So use it. Don't allow the narrative to be, hey, some changes coming in. Let the narrative be about, hey, we've got this new tool, this new capability, and this new potential to make the changes that we want. It's like, yes, Microsoft, thank you for your $4 billion to help educate the educators to prepare them with AI literacy. Okay, so we're going to take those funds and make those changes, because the root causes, if you don't change the root causes, it's just like when you're building a house. If you got a bad foundation, your house is going to collapse. You may not see it in the first 10 years, but in the next 20, those kinds of things. I think having a broader and longer worldview in this case is probably going to behoove us better than just trying to see it as an immediate issue of, oh, I don't know how to handle this change. It's like, just like any technology, use it for good.
You said behoove, and I just want to point out quick tangent firefighter story. Behoove was the word. It was used so much by one of my, it was like my first instructor when I worked for DeKalb County, and you had to go through training at their little training facility. And he would teach and teach and teach, and you're sitting there, whatever, and then he would say, it would behoove you to know the ratios of whatever it was for firefighter, right? So anyway, that's nothing here nor there. But if somebody says behoove, because you don't hear that word that often, Jimmy, so put a little smile on the side of my face, because I thought, oh, behoove. And it brings me, it's funny how a word can transport you right back to where you were. And I was like, rookie firefighter 2003 behoove. What do I need to know, in that classroom? I do want to bring up two quick comments, and then I think Andy, you were about to say something too, but I do want to bring this up. Oh man, it goes so fast. Jude had said they're having a full conversation. So there's part of a full conversation in our chat. By the way, join us live, 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. You can join the chat as well. But Jude was saying typing won't be a critical skill for much longer. And then Greg was saying, true, how many words per minute can you verbalize? And I think what that made me think of seeing those two, or oralize, Greg was saying as well. But I believe that I am better at systems and breaking down systems because of AI prompting. Full stop. I think I will get better at speaking more succinctly, not because of this show, because it doesn't put restrictions on me as it should. But the more I have to talk to AI in the future, the better I'm going to get at working my thoughts, which I do not do. I think out loud. You guys already know that. I think out loud on the show, but that's not great for tokens. That's not great for efficiency. That's not great for a lot of things. I believe in the future, I'm going to actually get better. I hope that I'm going to get better at how I communicate in a more efficient manner, because that's the way that I would probably do it, giving AI commands. It's already the way I write. So it doesn't surprise me that it would be something that I would probably do more of it. So in a world where we have more and more teens who, spend more time on their phone and they communicate this way, it's not such a bad thing. And I'm not picking on teens. I'm not that guy. I hate that. But, they're so different. They'll never make it. Our future's ruined. I'm not that guy. I love our teens and our kids, and I think they're going to do amazing things. But one of the things they're able to do really quickly is verbalize, communicate this way, and they don't have to stand up and speak and say something out loud. And that can be intimidating. Of course it can, if you don't do it a lot. But you know what could really help with that? Having a no bad idea way through to yourself to talk to AI and practice that. And I have no doubt that if my daughter was practicing daily, just giving commands back and forth to Gemini or Google, whatever, it would actually make her more confident with her ability to have other conversations with adults, things that will throw off a kid. Like, I don't know if I want to go up there and ask that. It'll be fine. They're not going to yell at you. You're a kid, and they're like, just go up there, go up to the counter, go figure it out. You got to push the kids to go do that. I think AI actually probably will help in a lot of ways for a really good critical skill, which is communication. So, there's a lot of ways I see it in my life. There's a lot of ways where I think I worry that it's an all or nothing with schools, and they're just pushing away this idea of AI as if it's somehow the big bad boogeyman, instead of it being like the technology that all of our students are going to have to interact with 100 times a day, minimally. Right? Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that one of the very first steps in understanding how the current new generations in primary school and secondary school are actually using AI. Like I've never seen any study that says, okay, in grade 6, this is what they're doing with AI. In grade 11, this is what they're doing with AI. And there's a progression there, obviously. I mean, the third and fourth and fifth graders are probably not using the same tools, although one might make an argument that it's Chat GPT across the board, given the numbers. But there also may be, even in local, geographic cells, there may be a kind of viral spawning of use of different tools that we aren't even familiar with, that have been targeted to those students at that age and are actually kind of finding some traction, through the mobile app marketplaces and so on. I don't know what the answer is to that question, but I think it's a fundamental question. They're going to be using AI. They already are using AI. Some of them don't realize they're using AI when they're using AI. And that's a key component of AI literacy. You have to understand where it's already introducing itself, in ways that aren't clearly labeled. Hey, you're using AI. And that's going to happen, to these next generations in a natural way. So we need to understand that. I mean, if I were running the Department of Education, that would be one of the first areas of research that I would pursue, is across the country, find some way to get honest answers about how people in 7th grade are using AI. And is there a gender difference? Like what's happening? Is it all character AI? And that's what's happening. And how do we find a point of influence in those interactions where we can give them the critical skills that they need to understand how to effectively use AI, not just entertain themselves with AI or follow the crowd with AI. So let me just, from the AI Lit framework, I wanted to just touch on the 4 main objectives, if you will, of the AI Lit framework, which is a framework out there. Every state in the United States is probably going to have to build their own framework or leverage something from the World Economic Forum, for example. But the first one is engaging with AI. Like, know when you're engaging, understand how it's present in everyday tools, and be able to critically evaluate what you're using in your everyday interactions with your smartphone and other points of intersection with the sort of the webosphere, and evaluate the outputs of the AI. So that's how you engage with AI, when and where, how is it happening? Number 2, when you're creating with AI, learn how to collaborate with AI tools to support problem solving and your own creativity. But you have to understand the complications that come from ownership issues and bias and plagiarism, et cetera. So creating with AI has to be taught in such a way that that what you've done by prompting an AI isn't enough. You need to understand how to make it your own in some way. The third one is, delegating tasks to AI responsibly, and that's sort of managing AI, setting guidelines, and ensuring human oversight. And here's where I think the critical thinking and evaluation of what the outputs of an AI response are. And I've said on the show before, my experience with AI is I often find myself, especially in the context of vibe coding, immediately identifying that there's a flat side or a gap in the analysis that led to the response that is saying, I'm going to make these changes to your code. And I have to challenge the AI with that. And I should have taken screenshots of it, of the number of times said, oh, you're absolutely right. I want children in AI literacy programs to see those examples and not just take as ground truth whatever the AI spits back, because it's pretty convincing. It's been designed to be convincing and authoritative in its response. But there's so many cases where if you had the lifelong experience to know that, hey, people and machines can make mistakes, that's essential. And so now finally the AI Lit framework adds a 4th area of important sort of critical approach to AI. And that is, how do you design AI interaction and outputs that will adapt to solve real world problems, not just provide you with answers in your day-to-day life, but how can AI support the broader scheme of things and advance society? And that's aspirational and a little bit woo out there. But the first 3, I think, are really essential, and they ought to be a part of curricula right now in our primary schools, starting in our primary schools, with very simple examples of how you engage with AI, where that's happening. Something as simple as when you hear your mom talking to her phone and saying, blah, 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 she is interacting with an AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. Just simple things like that from the beginning are really, really helpful for helping understand context. Well, I would say, like, once again, we've solved it. I mean, I don't know that we should go any farther. I feel like we've solved AI literacy in the school system. And I mean, we did it in less than 45 minutes. Like we're coming up on 45 right now. So kudos, pats to us on the back. You know, once again, the Daily AI Show has solved. But no, like in all seriousness, I love having these conversations. It's important to have these conversations. It is Anne, who we talked about earlier, with She Leads AI. She said one of the kindest things about this show, and she said, you know, it grows, it doesn't, it gets big, you know, it's you become super famous off it or you don't, which honestly, we're all here for the conversations. She said, what you're doing is you're putting a stamp in time every single or every weekday to talk about these topics. And won't it be nice to be able to go back and see what people are talking about in AI on almost any given day, because they'll be able to do that by looking through the Daily AI Show. And I think that's the best way to sort of think about topics like today. No, of course we're not. I'm being silly, right? We're not going to solve this today. We're the three of us, you know, but having conversations, listening and reading what you guys are putting in the chat, which is always so informative, really does help move the needle a little bit in a one little small way. And so we'll continue to have these conversations. You know, look, watch the money, watch the big players. They're the ones with the money. They're, you know, it's not probably going to come through government. It's probably going to come through privatization. It's going to come through these companies who are able to invest and put their resources there. But go and look. I didn't have time to go over it today, but go and, you know, do a perplexity search and look at what all the big players, like I told you, the Apples, the IBMs, Anthropics, and so forth, are doing currently in the school system. And that's mostly just the United States, never mind what's going on in Australia or around Europe or otherwise. So I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation today. Tomorrow, we'll be back with, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about this, but it's our broader, more open-ended conversation where we'll be talking about not only just news, but topics that just interest us right now. And they aren't big enough to be a full show. And so when we have our Friday shows, it's a great opportunity for us to have just a 5-minute conversation about a particular topic and then move on to something else and keep it fresh and exciting. So come back and hang out with us tomorrow. As always, as we're getting into the weekend here, you can sign up for the newsletter, which goes out every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. That's free. You can go to thedailyishow.com in order to sign up for that newsletter. If you want to be part of our free community that goes beyond our live chats, you can go to thedailyishowcommunity.com, and that will take you to our free Slack community. I also put out a conundrum episode that's a little bit of an intro of me, but then a whole lot of two AI co-hosts. I don't know, Andy, maybe do I need to try the new Microsoft product this week? Microsoft, what was it? Vibe? Voice? What was it?
Yeah, Voice Vibe.
Voice Vibe. So I was close. So if that's available, maybe the conundrum episode will be that this week. We'll try it, see if we can get a couple voices in there. That goes out on our podcast platforms. I stopped doing it on YouTube because honestly, it's not a video, so the engagement was fairly low comparatively, but it does really well on Spotify and Apple and stuff like that. So I'm going to keep doing it there. So that's everything going on as of right now. Come back and hang out with us one more day tomorrow before we wrap up the week. But thanks for being here, and we will see you guys. Mañana.
Aloha.